Hi, this is Karen O'Brien, and today I wanted to do a video on GeoPackage management, basically how to move a GeoPackage, how to zip up a GeoPackage and protect it, and then how to use a GeoPackage to, as like say, a springboard into a different kind of project. So let's talk about, first of all, let's just talk about a GeoPackage and exactly what is a GeoPackage. So let me show you down here. We have a program called Database Browser. Database Browser is for SQLite, and SQLite is sort of an open source SQL manager, and Database Browser helps you kind of open and view and modify uh, GeoPackages as using SQL tools, okay? SQLite tools, actually. So they're free, open source. So you can get this guy online and install it if you want. It's really super helpful if you need to just see what's in your GeoPackage to determine whether or not it's something that you want to use. So let's go ahead and open it up. And it's a very fast program. And so if you go in here and you grab a GeoPackage, I will say one thing I don't like about DB Browser is that its default is to only run like a small number of, so if you have a really big table and you're trying to do a SQL processing on it, say for example, I wanted to change 1,000,000 n values to say a 20% more or 20% less, that this particular program would struggle with that. So you would probably, not, it would just, it's limited to the number of records it can process unless you specifically say, hey, don't limit this, just do everything. Um, and you can ask ChatGPT for instructions on how to build SQLs and execute SQLs and turn off those limitations. So you can see here that we have all of our tables that are part of your FLO-2D GeoPackage. Most of these you will never use, such as these guys right here that just help with like pyramids and things like that. Not really pyramids, but just more like this helps sort of organize the tables so that you're only accessing a certain part of them at one given time. But all of your FLO-2D tables are in here, and this is not necessarily a good way to browse data. But if you know what you're looking for, so let's say, for example, I'm looking in my channel and I know what I'm looking for, then I can come in here and modify these values. Or I can come in here and let's go ahead and look for something like, let's say infiltration or something like that. Let's see, I think we need, I'm looking, infiltration cells green, and you could come in here and you could build a SQL and execute it, and it would modify the data in here. Or you could just filter it, high to low, and you could run some statistics on it using a SQL. And how do you get those SQLs? You just ask ChatGPT, give it the table name. If you were to show this picture to ChatGPT, it would give you a SQL table that you could execute right here that would give you something interesting about that table, or modify that table, or join that table to another table. So the DB browser is super helpful. I'm going to leave it at that. Let's go ahead and close it down because I kind of tend to prefer, I like the DB browser for quick browsing because you don't have to, you can just double click that and it'll open in DB browser. So it's really quick. Or you can come to the DB browser that's built into QGIS and you can create a new connection. And this one is a little bit more helpful in that it kind of gives you a better idea of what those tables are. For example, we know that this is a geo table because it has a polygon shape. We know this one is just a standard table because it has the table shape. So we have point, polyline, polygon. We know this one is a raster. And we also can see right here that this is our QGZ file because it has the QGIS icon. So it's really helpful to use this. And again, if you want to perform SQL on this, you just right click it. Well, sorry. Well, hang on. We should be able to right click and you can execute a SQL. You can manage the table. Don't delete these tables, by the way. Don't delete any part of your FLO-2D project. It doesn't really work that way. You will break your project if you delete a table. Okay, so export layer, you can execute a SQL, or you can just drag this onto the map and it will load it right up here. You can open the attribute table and quickly see what's in here. And then when you're finished with it, right click R just to remove it. So again, the DB browser is an excellent way to both review and modify GeoPackage tables. Now, what about moving or copying a GeoPackage? Let's go on to that next topic. If you copy a GeoPackage into a new location, or for example, if I copy this and then let's say I want to move everything to, a folder called Alt1 because I want to add an alternative to a baseline model. So I move this here. Well, guess what? And then I load it from here. Well, guess what I just did? I just loaded this GeoPackage, but it's still connected to this GeoPackage because GeoPackage have a path inside of them that is relative to their location on the computer. So if you copy paste them, the path will possibly be connected to two separate projects. If you cut paste them, the path will not be connected to two separate projects, okay? Now, what else can you not do? You cannot rename a GeoPackage, so don't rename it. It has to maintain the same name. So if I wanted to do an Alt1, I have two potential alternatives to do that. I'm going to load this GeoPackage so I can show you the first way to do that. So I'm going to pause the video until I load this GeoPackage. Now, just to remind you of this load process, whenever you are working with GeoPackages, you may not always want to use this recent projects list to load your project. Always go here and click Open FLO-2D project and navigate to the project you want to load and click Open. Try to avoid using that project list as it can connect you to something that you may not realize that or may not want to be connected to. I'm going to pause until this loads. Okay, this project is now loaded. I wanted to show you, let's see. Well, as you can see, this project is pretty complex, so let's go ahead and remove this timdep.out. We're going to remove that group, and let's go ahead and simplify this by collapse all. We don't need that. Let's go ahead and remove that. And let's go ahead okay, that looks better. So that's a little cleaner. And I want to make sure that, and you see here we have our external layers, and in our external layers we have our elevation, and we have our rainfall, and we have soil data. Oh, that's funny. I expanded this project. I forgot that I did that, but I went ahead and expanded this project. Let's see. So project domain. Yeah, okay, that's fine. That's okay to expand the project. Let's see. So what we want to do is just like create a backup of this project. So let's go ahead and just do that. Let's go, let's see. We want to back up. So we go to our database manager and we create a FLO-2D backup. And that is going to give you this is the date and time stamp of your computer, 11/11/2025, and the time on my computer is 10:22. Or you can do something different. You can say self-help project. This will be Alt1, or you might say something like FLO-2D project, and then you give it, the name of the next thing that you're working on. And we click create a backup. Okay, now what that's done is that has taken a complete copy of our Alt1 GeoPackage and put it right here. We are actually done with these two. So you can see right now we have the self-help GeoPackage and the Alt1 GeoPackage. Now, why is this not in the Alt1 folder? Because our GeoPackage is not in the Alt1 folder. We can put our DAT files in the Alt1 folders. We can put our Alt shape files and everything in the Alt1 folder, but our GeoPackage stays here, okay? And we don't have to delete this one anymore. We can just utilize it. So let's take a quick look at, I'm just going to load that. So I'm going to click and I'm going to close this one. And yes, I do want to save that. Actually, you know what? I probably should have saved that. Let's click yes. Let's see what we got here. Yeah, we don't want any of that over here. So let's just click OK. And then let's close this. Oops, sorry, wait for that to do that to finish and then close it. Now let's load our Alt1. So I'm gonna do that and then I'm gonna pause the video until it's ready. Okay, now we're ready to load that project. Let's go ahead and close that. We don't want to worry about that right now. But now again, like I'm not gonna load this one, right? I'm gonna leave that alone and we're gonna go FLO-2D project, open. And this time, instead of loading this one, I'll grab this one. Click open. And I'm not really sure. I think the problem is I didn't hit the save button before and so that's why those are still there. Yeah, that's my fault. And don't worry about that. That's not an actual issue. I know because I was able to process that. So let's just not worry about that message for now. Right click, remove group, and then let's get rid of this one. Right click R, and then let's do this where we collapse this and then open that back up. Now I wanted to show you that we do still have all of these layers because we did that, that backup. And if you zoom onto this layer, it will give you the location of that layer. And you can see where that data is located. See, that's in the hydrology folder of lesson 1. And then our land use is in hydrology folder of lesson 1. But then this one here is part of our GeoPackage. So you can see that this path is Alt1 GeoPackage. So look if we load this, create a connection, and we connect to Alt1, you can see that inside Alt1, that external data is still part of the project. But what's missing, I believe, is, let's see, let's go ahead and hit save and yes, and we'll just leave that alone. We only want these two and click OK. All right. And now this project is ready to modify for Alt1. But why did it stay in here? Because all of these paths to this extra data, well, not that one, but all of these paths to this extra data that it's connected to are relative to this position. So if I move this, it's probably going to lose these guys. So you may have to like reconnect those, and that's kind of a pain in the neck. So that's why I leave it here. I don't move it into its own individual and distinct folder. And I think that's kind of important because you don't want to lose the connectivity to that data. Next is protecting your data. So before I do anything with a file, the first thing I want to do, you can do that, create a backup, but you still need to protect this stuff with a zip. So if you right click, and if you are just a standard Windows user, you can use standard send to compressed file, or you might be using WinRAR or WinZip or something like that. That's perfectly fine. I use 7-Zip. It's open source, free Windows zipping software. And I can either do to 7Z, which sometimes will make it a really small and compacted GeoPackage, but it takes a bit longer, or I can just do selfhelp.zip because if I'm sharing this to other people, they probably don't have 7-Zip installed. So I'll click that and I'm going to pause until that's complete. Pause the video. Okay, now that took about 25 seconds, maybe 30 seconds to zip this. And as you can see, it didn't get a whole lot smaller because it has that elevation data in there. So elevation data is not as compressible as regular data. I mean, you can make elevation data really small, say by using deflate or something like that. But if you want lossless, you still want to utilize that data or extract it into something that you can utilize. You don't want to compress elevation data too much. So because you'll lose the data or you'll lose the ability to process. For example, if you used deflate to compress elevation data, you might lose the ability to then merge that elevation data with another file or warp that elevation data into another file if you use something like deflate. All right, so now that I have this, what I would do is I would say self-help project, but I'm going to call it baseline model or baseline data, right? So my baseline is now protected and I can now completely delete that file. And that absolutely ensures that this self-help project, when I load it, is not accidentally coming back and connecting to that. And what do? I just pop this guy into the backup folder and I know, and I can either take notes on keep what I have. What do I not do? I do not copy that into the backup folder. I don't copy a GeoPackage back into the output folder because then you might accidentally load the wrong one. So I zip it and move that zipped one. Now, how do I get it back when I want it back? I come back here. Let's make this date modified. As you can see, I have a lot of backup data in here, and I do have some copies and stuff, but where do these go when I'm ready to reload them? They go right back to my base folder. So if I were, let's make sure there's not one in here that's called self-help project. There isn't. So if I extract this, I'm going to go extract here, and that doesn't take nearly as long to extract. So now you see I have this here. I'm going to cut that from there, Control X, and paste it back where I was originally going to load it from, so that that relative path then can go and find all of everything, the other files that it wants to load. And the same with the alt. You're going to zip it, and then you put your zip in the backups, and then if you need to get that back, you delete this one, extract it, and then replace it back here, okay? Don't copy. I mean, you can see I've copied these backups in here, but guess what? I don't use them here. I cut them back out where I need them, okay? So that's GeoPackage management. That's setting up a processor for an alternate GeoPackage. There's one final trick. Well, it's not really a trick, it's just a tool. And I do have a handful of users that use this method. So I'm going to set up my project one more time. So I'll hit the pause button, and then we'll come back when we're ready to set up the final scenario. Okay, so the final scenario is to build a blank GeoPackage. Standard way, new project. We're going to click create, and so we'll call this Alt-2 and save it. And then we have to set the coordinate system and click OK. And now we are building a blank GeoPackage. I'll pause until this is complete. Okay, final step. Okay, again, well, maybe this is not again because I was thinking I'm referring to a different video, but this is not important. This is not important because we're going to import our GeoPackage. And so you can see here we're using FLO-2D Gila 2.0. The FLO-2D version is not found because I'm using an experimental model. And the QGIS version 3.4, that's important. And that's now part of your GeoPackage. All of this data is now part of your GeoPackage metadata. And we click OK. And now it's going to load the FLO-2D plugin. And what we're going to do now is import a GeoPackage in here. Now, what's going to happen when we import a GeoPackage? Well, let's just watch. Import from GeoPackage. And let's go ahead and grab this one right here, okay? So back to the baseline model. Alt-1 started with the baseline model. Alt-2 started with the baseline model. Now, what if Alt-3 started from Alt-2? No problem. You just make a backup of Alt-2 or you import Alt-2. What am I not doing? Again, I am not changing these names. I'm not moving these guys. Don't worry about this. I'm not concerned about this at the time because it doesn't seem to be causing any problems with my export import data, and it does seem to be resolving itself once the project fully loads. Okay, so now we have now we have imported the baseline model and is ready to process Alt-1. What is not here? The external layers group isn't here. Does that mean the data that was in that external layers group, which if you remember that there were only two external layers that were part of the system, right? For example, what I mean by that is the elevation. And I think if I hit the M key, that'll take me down to Manning's and the Manning's and shapefile. Those were the only things that were part of that GeoPackage. Are those missing? Are those truly missing? I don't know. Let's take a look. Let's connect Alt 2 and let's see if those are actually missing, because look at the size of it. Doesn't look like they're missing. So Alt 1, elevation data is there, but the external layers group was disconnected. So that's one of the reasons I'm not a huge fan of that import method, but it's a good method to just absolutely, completely ensure that your paths are good and valid. We'll pop this guy in here, and then we're going to pop, I'm sorry, I forgot. Then we're going to go hit the M key, and we'll pop this guy in here. And I believe that is the only data that was built into the GeoPackage. The rest of the data was connected through external paths. Okay, so come on in here, and we're going to change our symbology to hillshade, and we will pop both of these guys into a group called external layers. Okay, external layers. And what does that mean? It means that these are not part of a native GeoPackage, but they definitely imported into the project correctly. So now we're done with that one, and we're done with that one, and we can also add our satellite image. And then the very next thing that I want to do is click Save, and now this project is set up and ready to go. So I'm gonna stop everything here, and if you have any issues or any questions with this methodology, remember, don't copy paste GeoPackages, cut paste them, or zip and to protect them before you move them and load them and open them. Okay, you can move a GeoPackage, that's perfectly fine, as long as you cut paste it. So I'll stop this video right here.